just finished up inside portion of just stretch and those types of things, and just headed outside for a little routes on air and short abbreviated kind of a walkthrough acclimation day today, and then they'll go full week next week with the long full practices of spring ball next week, and then take spring break off. But yeah, it's back, and pretty good mass unit as you would expect to get started here, with some guys limited after some off-season work, and but you're getting to see a lot of new faces today. And Star Thomas, the transfer running back, is a guy who jumps out at you when you watch him run through drills. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how that running back group works out and what that looks like. Peyton Lewis certainly looks like he's had a good offseason as well. Those are a couple of guys that just jump out at you in quick observations this morning at that position.
Brent Hubbs of VolQuest's with us. So, Brent, the big question and the story we've been following since last week is Rickey Gibson's status. Do you expect him to be available through all of spring practice? And is there any update on Tennessee working on maybe a new deal to keep him around for the season in the fall?
Well, I do anticipate, he's on the practice field. He's been with the team. I anticipate him continuing to practice and go through spring. I do think that it's much more likely that he is a part of this program moving forward than he's not. But here's what everybody has to keep in mind. The spring portal window doesn't open until the end of April. So what we're learning and what we've learned, not just about Rickey Gibson, but anybody around the country, is what is the story on Friday or the plan on Friday could be different come Tuesday. So we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out. But I do anticipate at this point in time, he will go through all of spring, and I think he'll be on the football field this fall for Tennessee. I think Rickey wants to be here. I think everything will get worked out, whatever that means, and Rickey will be one of Tennessee's starting corners this fall, as it stands as of right now. Again, anything could change, as we well know, but as it stands right now, that's where I think it's at.
So, Brent, in the secondary, I thought it was interesting. You guys wrote about this in the War Room this morning. Nashville native and Lipscomb product Caleb Beasley is a guy who was brought up as a corner, committed to Tennessee as a corner, potentially a guy who could have a new home within this secondary. What are the expectations for a guy like him, Brent, who is at a point in a very, very big part in his career, maybe getting a chance to stick at Tennessee at safety?
Well, I think this is, with Rickey Gibson being out there and Jalen McMurray being out there, and you've got those three newcomers at corner who are a part of the signing class. I think Caleb Beasley's the guy that cross-trains this spring. I think he starts at corner. I think he's at corner here probably the first week. And then I think they will try to look at him some at safety. They might even look at him some at the star position. I think he is the guy that they will fully cross-train after he's had a year under his belt in this system. Where it all shakes out for him, what's best position for him, remains to be seen. And that may depend on just what their depth looks like at various places. But I do think he is the guy that they think can play multiple positions, and I think they'll start that process right now.
Our good friend Brent Hubbs of VolQuest's on 3 with us this morning. Happy Friday, Hubbs.
Happy Friday, Mr. Ramon.
Hopefully you don't get anybody say you on here just rambling and stuff like that, man.
I'm trying my best this morning. I'm trying my best. Yes or no, right? Yes or no question.
Yes, sir. No, sir. With that being said, Hubbs, can we get a little bit more information on how this spring game is going to work out? I saw the capacity for it is 45,000. Ron Slay told me it'll be 40,001 with him being in the building. But why that number, Hubbs, and what's going on around this game?
Oh, I don't know exactly what the format's going to be. Yeah. We'll see if they put the ball down and play, or if it's more, kind of a practice type deal as opposed to a scrimmage, and we'll find out that moving forward. Part of that will depend on injuries and what's the availability of everybody and stuff like that. The limited capacity is just so they can continue construction. They don't want to take a week to pull equipment out to make the whole stadium accessible to everybody. They will rope off some areas so that they can keep all their equipment in there, and they don't have to put up chain link fencing and barriers and that kind of stuff, and they can continue on with all that they're doing. So I think that no surprise there with the limited capacity, and that's just so they can continue on their path.
Got you. Hubbs, you speaking of, Will asked about Rickey Gibson earlier, and at other universities will go through this in the spring too, where players are gone. Do you see a scenario, especially in college, that we're seeing in the NFL, that they may get to a point to where trades happen? I know it's the portal, but like the idea that, hey, okay, you want to go to Alabama after this, go negotiate with their GM and see what we can get back for you. I mean, We're close. We're close enough, Hubs.
I mean, listen, you got to make them employees, and you got to get a collective bargaining agreement before you get into anything like that. I think the biggest step right now that college administrators and college coaches want is that they just want some protection. And I think it starts by eliminating the second portal window.
Okay.
What no coach wants to do is they do not want to, Ramon, be sitting here in April trying to figure out what the roster looks like. Mm-hmm. They want to know what the roster is going to look like. So let's not have the two windows. Either do a spring window or do a December window, but don't do both windows. And I think that's where it starts, because that's the easiest fix. And then the question becomes multi-year contracts, employees of schools, and all those things. And that's a much bigger discussion, and that requires true leadership and a commissioner and all kinds of things like that. And I think we're a ways away from getting to that point.
You know what our option was back in 2007, Hubs? We used to just break into the facility and see what the depth chart was.
Statute of limitations is over now.
Yeah, and if you was third or fourth, guess what? You had to sit your behind down anyway and hope you can advance yourself in camp. That's what we had. That's what our portal was, Hubs.
Well, then you had to decide: do I want to sit out a year somewhere?
Yeah.
Am I low enough on the depth chart that it's justified for me going somewhere and not playing for a year of football? Do I want to make that kind of deal? And that's the problem right now is, and I'm not against freedom of movement, but we've got to put some parameters on some of this freedom of movement that everybody has, because, you can get mad, you get mad tomorrow in the practice field and be done. I mean, there are some coaches in college football who don't believe in doing team periods in spring practice because they don't want a kid to feel like where he's at on the depth chart, because he can leave in April.
What?
He works third team in spring ball. Hey, I go somewhere else to be first team.
So when
that's the mentality some have.
So when I took that D lineman from the line of scrimmage to the fence, he would have jumped in the portal after that rep, is what you telling me? That did happen, by the way.
Are you trying to tell me that whole scene in The Blind Side's modeled after you?
Hubs, I took a grown man at that time from the line of scrimmage to the fence, and the whole D-line laughed at him. Now, I also won most improved that year because we had live reps. I'm off my soapbox, Kayla. It's your turn now.
I mean, I'm enjoying story time. It's very entertaining.
A little bragging. That's when I knew, Kayla. I was like, I got a chance at this football thing.
You knew.
Yeah, you damn right.
The light went on. Brent Hubbs of VolQuest's joining us now. Go check out his work. He does awesome jobs, not only talking on here, but writing articles. 10 things I think. I love that. Preseason practice edition. Go read it now. But I did want to ask you about a couple things, Brent, starting with the offense. And I know everybody wants to know, is this offense by any means going to be tweaked? I know that they brought over Seth Luttrell as an analyst coming over from Oklahoma. But that's not going to mean that it's going to be some big shift, right, in terms of Joey Halsley's responsibilities.
No, I don't think it's a shift at all. I think it's an extra set of eyes. It's an experienced set of eyes. Seth Luttrell's a pretty hard-nosed, on-edge kind of guy. I think he's a little more rowdy, if you will, on the practice field, kind of maybe a little more boot in your hind end type deal. So we'll see how he settles in. But he's also got a lot of knowledge as a head coach and as a coordinator. He knows this system. He's worked this system, but he's done his own version of this system. He's had some tweaks in there too. So Tennessee's not going to suddenly come out and be in the wishbone or anything like that. But I do think, as Josh Heupel will tell you he's done throughout his entire career, you adjust as defenses adjust to you, and you counter their punch. And I've talked about it all off season since the Ohio State game. What is Josh Heupel's counter punch to how teams played them last year with 3 safeties and some different things they did to try to keep the ball in front of them and force Tennessee to be patient, limit the explosive plays? What is Josh Heupel's counter, not only in the run game, but what's his counter with pass routes and different things like that? I think those are all the things they've looked at this offseason, and they will work through this spring.
Brent, when it comes to the offensive line, we know there are a lot of new parts to that, but especially I just feel like that center position, and they've had so much to be thankful for in Cooper Mays for the past few years. What is the deal with trying to figure out who will be that guy?
Well, they've been looking for the guy behind Cooper Mays for 3 years, and they haven't found one. And now their hands forced. They've got to find one. And is it going to be Sam Pendleton, the transfer from Notre Dame? He could be a candidate there. Max Anderson, William Satterwhite, Jesse Perry are all potential candidates in there as well. I don't think that's going to be resolved this spring. I don't think they're going to have an answer to that by the end of spring through 15 workouts. But I think they'll have a direction that they're going to go, or maybe a top couple there, and see how that factors out in the summertime. But it's not a, hey, well, we'll figure out somebody. It's a, we have to find somebody deal. So there's a total different sense of urgency at that position for the first time in the Josh Heupel era.
VolQuest's Brent Hubbs with us this morning on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Brent, on the recruiting front, a massive weekend for Tennessee football as they continue to recruit five-star wide receiver Tristan Keys. How pivotal of a moment is this and his recruitment just this weekend, and how strong are Tennessee's chances at a position where they kind of got exposed a little bit against Ohio State to land this elite wide receiver?
Well, they're definitely in it. They've been in it for a while. They've had him here. Getting him back up here is huge. Getting him back up here with Faison Brandon at the same time is an even bigger deal. And so Tennessee has a big weekend coming up, not in terms of just massive amounts of numbers, but just in terms of the quality who's here. And Faison is working really hard at peer recruiting. Peer recruiting is different than it used to be because of the NIL factor. All these guys are buddies, but everybody always also understands, hey, I want you to play with me. But then when they say, well, I got this deal at this place, well, you got to go do what you got to go do. We all understand that. So it's a little bit different, but those two have continued to have dialogue, continued to be friends with each other. And so getting them both here together for some time spent on this campus together is a huge thing for Tennessee. And, Keys is going to have options everywhere around the country to go wherever he wants to go. And we'll see what that looks like, moving forward. He was going to be in a hurry, wanted something done in like January or February, and he's certainly slowed it down. I think he's going to make a decision in June or July. And if you're Tennessee, getting him here this early is good. You're trying to get him back a couple more times, including an official visit.
Local talent out of East Robinson, man, Zach Groves. I feel like there's been 2 or 3 of them that's escaped the commitment from the Vols, man. I see he'll be back on Rocket Top this weekend, man. What do you expect for in-state talent like him who's rated really good around the country?
Yeah, I mean, that's one. Tennessee's obviously ramping up and is recruiting hard and is trying to do everything they can with him. There's no assumption with anybody in state that they're just going to automatically go to their home state school. So getting him on campus is a big deal, and he's obviously a priority because, again, they're not bringing in 100 guys this weekend. They're bringing in some priority guys this weekend, and certainly Zach Groves is one of those guys. And I like what Tennessee's doing, Ramon, in terms of having smaller weekends as opposed to one big weekend, because you've got to get some one-on-one time with all these guys that you covet, and you want to do that in smaller increments instead of trying to do the car wash, if you will, and run a bunch of people through here at one time.
Hubs, when the Vols defense is really good in years past, and most teams I feel like in college too, the man in the middle on defense, man, an inside linebacker is the guy that everybody knows, man. How big, Hubs, is he? If I'm not mistaken, he's draft eligible this year. Is this year for Arion Carter?
I think it's huge, and I think we've created a really high level of expectations for Arion Carter. I think he's played well. I think what people forget about Arion Carter is, he didn't play linebacker in high school. He had not played linebacker since middle school. And so there's a really significant adjustment to what he has gone through. And I think he's gotten better. Has he been perfect? No. I think he missed Keenan Peely last year and put a lot of onus on Arion, not just as a leader, but a guy who helps line people up while he's still learning to be a linebacker, and he's only, learning it at the SEC level, which is a challenge. But he's got all the leadership skills. He's going to be, very limited to no work this spring because of a shoulder cleanup deal. But he is the voice on defense right now. Now they've got some other leaders, and Bryson Eason can lead some. I think Jackson Moy is going to emerge as a nice leader for Tennessee up front. But the bell cow, if you will, the lead dog is certainly Arion Carter, and Tennessee needs him to take another big step this offseason so that he can be at his best this fall and help those guys around him.
Brent, I did want to ask you one hoops question.
Sure.
With Tennessee dropping that game at Ole Miss and probably out of the number 1 seed consideration right now, do you feel like there's more that goes into the SEC tournament, maybe, in terms of playing for more now that they could possibly get back to that number 1 seed or a number 1 seed?
Well, they could. I mean, depending on how everything goes out in the matchups. I mean, I think Florida's got the lead into that role right now. But what does Florida do here in their last regular season game? What do they do in the tournament? I think the tournament in Nashville is going to be really, really wild. But, yeah, I mean, there's still things to play for. I think we all wonder how much the tournament committee, selection committee evaluates conference tournaments. I think when you're looking at 2 schools in the same conference for a potential number 1 seed, or 3 schools in the same conference for a potential number 1 seed, you probably put a little more emphasis on it. I think for Rick Barnes and his team right now, the emphasis is on getting back to rebounding the basketball. They've given up way too many offensive rebounds the last 2 games. They've given up way too many points in the paint the last 2 games. They've got to shore up things in the interior, regardless of their seeding, which, I mean, they're going to be at worst case a 2 in the NCAA tournament. But to be at their best going into the tournament, they've got to be better with their inside play, defensively and offensively. They've got to get to the rim. They've got to finish. They've got to be better in the paint than they were against Alabama, and certainly than what they were against Ole Miss. And you could hear the anger and frustration in Rick Barnes' voice post-game, just about he felt like his team played soft. And there's one thing about Rick Barnes, he doesn't want anything soft about his program, and he thought they were soft in the interior on Wednesday night.
Brent, quickly on the way out, I was up in Knoxville Tuesday, and it's incredible. People around Tennessee baseball just kind of have their look in their eye of like, we're trying to be calm, but this team is pretty unbelievable, right? Like it is insane the amount of talent that Tony Vitello has that have only had like 5 to 10 at bats this season, like legitimate blue chip talent that is hardly even playing, Brandon. It's just an incredible war chest that Tony Vitello's got at his disposal right now.
It is, and I'm incredibly amazed at how quickly they seem to have come together from a chemistry standpoint. Now, they haven't hit adversity. They haven't really settled into their lineup. They've been rotating guys, looking at guys at different positions, but this freshman class is unbelievable that Tony Vitello has put together. Their impact is showing up, and they've got depth on the mound. I mean, there's nothing about them right now that you look at and say, well, they're going to take some kind of step back from last year. I'm not saying they're going to win it all, but if they could handle adversity, if their chemistry can continue to develop and the clubhouse stays the way Tony Vitello has had it the last few years, man, they're going to be really hard to deal with, because they can pitch it in so many different ways. They've got so many arms, that stuff guys you really even haven't seen to this point. And AJ Russell's only going to get better, and obviously they can hit the daylights out of the baseball. So they've been terrific, and the conference schedule's coming. We know it's going to get harder when you get into that slate, but everybody in this league's going, oh, wow, really? Like, they lost a bunch of really good players. Like, what's going on with them? And you look at the roster and go, man, they've just got a lot of talent to work with, because they're really good.
They are, no doubt about it. Always good to have conversations with Brent Hubbs every Friday at 7:20 here on the show. Appreciate the time, Brent, as always. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
hey, guys, have a great weekend.
Yes, sir. You as well. There's Brent Hubbs with us this morning, brought to you by Ascend Federal Credit Union, your financial partner for every stage of life. I think you're going to see A.J. Russell maybe make a weekend debut this weekend, the Franklin High School product. So,
that's dope.
Potential future first-round pick. If that dude is healthy, whew, my goodness.
Book it.
It'd be crazy.
Book it.
615-737-1045. Got some time to take your phone calls. Ron Slay will join us coming up at 9:20 at his normal Friday spot as well. Shedeur Sanders, a lot of eyeballs on him this week. He has clapped back a little bit at the media, and we'll talk about that next. Well, bowling here with my guy, Trey Hartsook, Tickens Turf and Landscape Supply. That's where you go to take care of your lawn, the best in your neighborhood. And Trey, this is a great time to go ahead and get the best equipment in the neighborhood as well. You guys have got some excellent deals on mowers.
Hey, well, I'll tell you, man, the thing about getting out, cutting your grass, if you're like a lot of people, you really just want to get it done. You don't want it to run a Saturday or Sunday. You want to do it the most efficient way possible. And at Dickens Turf